London. Winter, 2006. A hotel room on an unremarkable street. The curtains are drawn. Room service trays are stacking up outside the door, breakfast, lunch, dinner, mostly untouched. The front desk hasn't seen the guest in 11 days. He checked in under his own name. Heath Ledger. 27 years old. And he has no intention of leaving. Inside, the room looks like a crime scene without a body. Magazine clippings taped to the walls. Photographs of hyenas mid-laugh, their jaws stretched open. Stills from A Clockwork Orange, Malcolm McDowell's dead-eyed stare. Playing cards scattered across the bed. And on the nightstand, a cheap notebook, already half-filled with handwriting that gets more erratic with every page. Ledger is sitting on the floor, cross-legged, talking to himself. Not rehearsing. Talking. Testing voices. A high rasp. A low growl. Something nasal. Something wet. He's been doing this for hours. He'll do it again tomorrow. And the day after that. For 43 days total. Here's what you need to know. Christopher Nolan didn't ask him to do this. No studio executive suggested it. No acting coach recommended it. Ledger designed his own psychological experiment, and he was the only test subject. His goal was specific and disturbing. He wanted to replicate the mental effects of solitary confinement. The disorientation. The loss of routine. The way isolation strips away social instinct and leaves something raw underneath. He believed that if he could touch that place in himself, he could find the Joker there. But the room in London was just the beginning. 2 years earlier, Nolan had approached Ledger about a completely different role. He wanted him to play Batman. Ledger turned him down flat. Told Nolan politely that he'd never do a superhero film. Nolan cast Christian Bale instead, made Batman Begins, and moved on. Then came the sequel. Nolan needed a Joker. Not the cartoonish clown Jack Nicholson had played in 1989, but something that felt like it crawled out of the real world. He went back to Ledger. This time, the pitch was different. This time, Nolan said 2 words that changed everything. No boundaries. Ledger said yes before the script was even written. That gap, months of empty time before a single word of dialogue existed, became the incubation period. Most actors wait for the material. Ledger decided to build the character from the inside out, before anyone could tell him what the character was supposed to be. So he flew to London, checked into the hotel, and disappeared. Inside that room, the notebook became something more than preparation notes. It became what Ledger later called a diary, though scrapbook is closer to the truth. He filled it with images that triggered something in him. Pictures of hyenas, because their vocalizations sounded like manic laughter. Panels from Batman comics, specifically The Killing Joke and Arkham Asylum. Stills of Malcolm McDowell as Alex DeLarge, the sociopath protagonist of A Clockwork Orange, a character who hurts people not for profit or revenge, but for the sheer pleasure of it. Ledger wrote phrases in the margins. Chaos. Kill the Batman? And he kept returning to one question. What does a person with absolutely no conscience sound like? The voice took weeks. He would record himself, play it back, erase it, start over. He experimented with pitch, rhythm, cadence. He tried making the voice feel slippery, impossible to pin down, impossible to predict. At some point during the process, he noticed something. The voice he was developing required constant lip movement to sustain. His mouth dried out. He started licking his lips between phrases to keep the sound consistent. That involuntary tick, the tongue darting across cracked lips, would become one of the Joker's most recognizable mannerisms. It wasn't a creative choice. It was a physical side effect that Ledger chose to keep. On day 43, he walked out of that hotel room. The diary was finished. The voice was locked. And the man who emerged was, by his own description, something he hadn't expected. He told Empire magazine that he'd ended up in the realm of a psychopath, someone with no conscience toward his own acts. He used the word sociopath. He used the phrase cold-blooded, mass-murdering clown. He said it like a diagnosis, not a performance choice. Production started in April 2007. Chicago. $185 million budget. IMAX cameras the size of refrigerators, the first time the technology had ever been used for a major feature film. Nolan was building something enormous. But the most dangerous element on set weighed about 170 pounds, had blonde hair under green dye, and carried a notebook in his back pocket. The first scene Ledger filmed with Christian Bale was the interrogation room sequence, arguably the most important scene in the entire film. 2 characters. 1 table. 1 overhead light. Batman slams the Joker into walls, throws him across the room, tries to beat information out of him. And the Joker laughs. The harder Batman hits, the more the Joker enjoys it. On paper, it's a power dynamic. On set, it became something else entirely. Bale, a committed actor himself, planned to pull his punches. Standard practice. You sell the hit with camera angles and sound design. But Ledger wouldn't let him. He started egging Bale on between takes. Kept telling him to actually connect. Bale refused. Ledger kept pushing. Go on. Go on. Go on. And when Bale still held back, Ledger took matters into his own hands, literally hurling himself into the tiled walls of the set so hard that the tiles cracked and dented. The damage is visible in the finished film. The stunt coordinator didn't cause it. The special effects team didn't plan it. Ledger threw his own body into concrete until the set broke. Bale later described the moment was something close to awe. He said Ledger's commitment was total. But he also admitted something that rarely gets quoted. Ledger came in and totally ruined his plans. Because he realized on that first day that Ledger was more interesting than him. That the Joker was going to swallow the movie whole. What the crew didn't realize yet was that Ledger had a system. He wasn't staying in character 24 hours a day, that's the myth. The reality was more precise and more unsettling. Makeup artist John Callion described a ritual. Every morning, Ledger would arrive on set relaxed, skateboarding around, giving bear hugs, cracking jokes. Then the makeup process would begin. Ledger would scrunch and contort his face as Callion applied the white paint and red smear, physically molding the prosthetics with his own expression so the makeup looked slept in, decayed, like the Joker hadn't removed it in days. And somewhere during that transformation, the person behind the makeup would go quiet. By the time the camera rolled, the diary would be open on his lap. He'd read a few pages. And then Heath Ledger was gone. Between takes, he stayed in the corner. Mumbling. Rocking slightly. Not breaking character, but not quite performing either, hovering in some middle space that made everyone on set deeply uncomfortable. Actor Charles Jarman, who played one of the mob henchmen in the famous pencil scene, described it simply. Ledger was never in the room when they were setting up. He would enter the room as the Joker. He would leave the room as the Joker. 4 days at a time, you didn't see the actual person. Then lunch would come, and Ledger would be back, laughing, skateboarding, challenging the stunt guys to go-kart races on the backlit. Bale has a story about this. They went to a track near the set. The stunt drivers, professional precision drivers, expected to dominate. Ledger won. Beat every single one of them. Then casually mentioned that his father had been a go-kart racer. He delivered this information the same way the Joker delivers a punchline, after the damage was already done. But there's something about this story that most people don't know. And it changes everything about how you hear the rest of it. Ledger was keeping more than a character diary. He was losing sleep. Not in the normal, stress of a big movie way. His body was rejecting rest. He told the New York Times during a London press visit that he was averaging 2 hours of sleep per night. His mind, he said, wouldn't stop. The Joker's thought patterns, the anarchic logic, the pleasure in destruction, the constant recalibration, had seeped into his resting brain. He couldn't shut it off. And the diary, the one he carried everywhere, the one his father would later show the world, that diary had a final page. The last thing Ledger wrote in it, after weeks of psychopathic monologues and clown imagery and hyena photographs, was 2 words scrawled across the paper in large, uneven handwriting: bye-bye. His family insists it was theatrical. His sister Kate told Entertainment Weekly that he was having fun, that he wasn't depressed about the Joker, that the darkness people project onto his process wasn't real. And maybe that's true. Maybe bye-bye was the Joker's farewell to the diary, a character signing off. But here's what can't be debated: those pages traveled with Ledger from a London hotel room to a Chicago film set to a New York apartment. And on January 22, 2008, 3 months after filming wrapped, 6 months before the world saw his performance, Heath Ledger was found dead. Accidental overdose. Prescription medication. He was 20 years old. The news hit the set's alumni like a detonation. Michael Caine, who'd worked in film for 60 years, said it still made him sad more than 15 years later. Caine had his own Ledger story, and it might be the most telling detail about what that performance actually did to the people who witnessed it up close. Caine played Alfred, Bruce Wayne's butler. In the scene where the Joker crashes Bruce's fundraiser party, Alfred is supposed to be at the elevator, greeting guests. Caine had dialogue. Blocking. Marks to hit. He was prepared. Then the elevator doors opened, and Heath Ledger came tearing out in full Joker makeup, surrounded by henchmen, shotgun in hand, face paint cracked and smeared. Caine had never seen Ledger in character before. Not in rehearsal. Not in dailies. This was the first time. He forgot every line. 60 years of professionalism, hundreds of films, and Michael Caine froze. He later called it one of the most terrifying things he'd ever experienced on a set. And here's the detail that matters. Nolan kept the take. Caine's genuine shock, the way Alfred just stares, mouth slightly open, unable to speak, that's in the final cut of the film. It's not acting. It's a 74-year-old veteran encountering something he'd never seen before. Nolan, for his part, understood what he had in Ledger and gave him room to expand. He let Ledger direct the Joker's homemade hostage videos himself, the ones where the Joker films his victims and sends the tapes to Gotham News. After seeing how Ledger handled the first video, Nolan trusted him to film the second one without any directorial supervision. Think about that. A $185 million production, and the director handed the camera to the actor and walked away. The hospital explosion, that massive, practical demolition of an actual building, is surrounded by myths about improvisation. The truth is simpler and more impressive. Nolan and special effects supervisor Chris Corbould designed a deliberate pause between the first set of charges and the final demolition, a beat where the Joker looks around, confused, as if the detonator has malfunctioned. Ledger rehearsed that walk 12 times. Every step, every head tilt, every moment of mock confusion was choreographed to the second. They had one shot. One take. One building. Ledger executed it with surgical precision, never once looking back at the wall of fire erupting behind him. Nolan later said he didn't know how Ledger resisted turning around. And there's one more detail. In that scene, the Joker is wearing a nurse's uniform. On the name badge, pinned to his chest, is a single word, Matilda. The name of Ledger's daughter. He was 27 when he pinned it there. A father dressed as a psychopath, wearing his child's name over his heart, walking calmly away from an explosion. Nobody told him to do that. He just did. If you believe that stories like this deserve to be remembered, not buried, not mythologized, but actually told, subscribe. Because Hollywood has spent years turning Heath Ledger into a cautionary tale, and the truth is more complicated than that. The Dark Knight opened on July 18, 2008. It made $158 million in its first weekend, a record at the time. It crossed $1 billion worldwide. It earned 8 Academy Award nominations. And Heath Ledger won the Oscar for Best Supporting Actor. His family accepted it on his behalf. His father. His mother. His sister Kate, the same sister who used to dress him up as a nurse when they were children playing at home in Perth. The room in London is long gone. Whatever hotel it was has probably been renovated twice since then. But the diary survived. Caine Ledger, Heath's father, keeps it. He showed it on camera once, for a German documentary called Too Young to Die. He turned the pages slowly, past the hyena photographs, past the comic panels, past the voice notes, and the scrawled phrases about chaos. He reached the last page. 2 words. Bye-bye. And then Caine Ledger closed the notebook, the same way his son must have closed it on day 43, when he stood up from the floor of that hotel room, opened the curtains for the first time in 6 weeks, and walked out into the London winter carrying a character that would outlive him.